Sarah Jenkins stared at her laptop screen, the student loan balance glaring back at her. $87,432.19. 4 years at a prestigious university, a business degree that was supposed to open doors, and now this. Crushing debt that grew each month despite her faithful minimum payments. Outside her apartment window, downtown Chicago bustled with life. People with jobs that mattered, with futures that weren't mortgaged to the hilt. 5 years after graduation, and Sarah was still living paycheck to paycheck, sharing a cramped 2-bedroom with a roommate she barely knew, working a soul-crushing job at a marketing firm that had promised growth but delivered only overtime. Her phone pinged. A text from her mother. "Your dad's been laid off, the plant's closing, moving everything to Mexico. 30 years and not even a proper severance." Sarah's stomach clenched. Her parents had remortgaged their modest Indiana home to help with her first year of college. Now in their 60s, they had little savings and a mortgage they couldn't afford on just her mom's part-time salary at Walmart. Another text followed. "Doctor says Dad's blood pressure is dangerously high. Insurance ends next month." Sarah closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Her $4,200 in savings, painstakingly built over 2 years, was earmarked for her own medical deductible after a recent ER visit for appendicitis, but her parents needed it more. With trembling fingers, she replied, "I'll help, don't worry." Later that evening, Sarah sat in a downtown bar, nursing a happy hour special she couldn't really afford, surrounded by co-workers celebrating someone's promotion. Not hers, never hers. She'd been passed over 3 times despite consistently exceeding targets. "You look like you need something stronger than that," came a voice from beside her. The man who slid onto the neighboring bar stool was expensively dressed. Custom suit, designer watch, the easy confidence of old money. He looked to be in his 50s, distinguished with salt and pepper hair. "I'm fine, thanks," Sarah replied, not in the mood for small talk. "I'm Richard Bennett," he continued, undeterred. "I noticed you at the Philips presentation last month. Your market analysis was impressive." Sarah straightened. The Philips account was huge, a pharmaceutical giant that had brought millions to her firm. She'd worked 80-hour weeks on that pitch, only to watch her boss take credit for her research. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "You're with Philips?" Richard smiled, signaling the bartender. "Board of directors. Your ideas on targeting rural markets were particularly insightful." 2 hours and several drinks later, Sarah found herself in Richard's Bentley, heading toward the Gold Coast. His penthouse apartment offered a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan, the city lights reflecting off the dark water like fallen stars. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Richard said, handing her a glass of wine that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "I never get tired of this view." "It's amazing," Sarah admitted, feeling out of place among the minimalist furniture and original artwork that screamed wealth. Richard settled onto a leather sofa. "So, Sarah Jenkins, Stanford Business School graduate, top of your class, working at that second-rate agency for what, $65,000 a year?" She flinched at the accuracy. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know talented people," he said smoothly. "People who are undervalued, who deserve more than they're getting." The conversation shifted, Richard asking pointed questions about her background, her family, her financial situation. Something in his manner made Sarah answer honestly. Perhaps the alcohol, perhaps the desperate need to unburden herself to someone who seemed to understand. "That's the American tragedy," Richard said when she finished. "Brilliant young people crushed under debt, parents losing jobs to outsourcing, medical costs destroying families. The system is designed to keep people like you trapped." "You sound like you've escaped the trap," Sarah observed. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I learned early that conventional rules are for conventional people. Success requires flexibility." He refilled her glass. "I have a proposition for you, Sarah. A way to solve your financial problems overnight." Her pulse quickened. "What kind of proposition?" "I represent certain investors who specialize in pharmaceutical distribution. Gray market, you might say. There's a shipment coming in next week. Cancer drugs that sell for $15,000 per dose in the US, but cost only $400 to manufacture. My investors obtain them directly from manufacturers overseas. Sarah's mind raced. Grey market pharmaceuticals, not exactly illegal if they were legitimate medications, but definitely in an ethical grey zone, especially for someone on a pharmaceutical company's board. These medications save lives, Sarah, Richard continued. People who can't afford the American price but desperately need treatment. We're just bypassing the corporate greed. It sounded almost noble when he put it that way. What would I have to do? She asked. Simple. The shipment arrives at a private airfield. You pick it up, drive it to a warehouse in Gary, that's it, one night's work. And why me? You don't even know me. Richard leaned forward. You have a clean record. No one would suspect you. And you have the perfect motivation, desperate financial need. How much? The question left her lips before she could stop it. $100,000, cash. The figure hung in the air between them. $100,000, enough to pay off her parents' mortgage, enough to make a significant dent in her own student loans, financial breathing room she'd never had. Is it dangerous? Richard waved dismissively. Minimal risk. The medications are legitimate, just not FDA approved for US distribution. Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities, with justifications. People needed these medications. The American healthcare system was broken anyway. Was it really wrong to help people access treatments they couldn't otherwise afford? I'll need an answer by tomorrow, Richard said. This opportunity won't come again. That night, Sarah barely slept. She researched grey market pharmaceuticals, finding articles about counterfeit drugs, contaminated medications, criminal penalties, but also stories of desperate patients turning to overseas sources for medications they couldn't afford at American prices. The next morning she called her father. His voice sounded tired, defeated. How are you holding up, Dad? Oh, you know me, pumpkin. Tough as nails. The forced cheerfulness broke her heart. Don't you worry about us. We'll figure something out. Dad, your medication or insurance covers it for another month. After that, he trailed off. Your mum's talking about selling the house, moving into that apartment complex by the highway. The home where Sarah had grown up. The garden her mother had tended for decades. The workshop where her father had taught her to build birdhouses and repair bicycles. That's not going to happen, she promised. I'm coming into some money soon. Sarah Jean, don't you dare take out more loans for us. We won't have it. It's not a loan, Dad. It's a bonus for the Phillips account. The lie tasted bitter, but the relief in her father's voice was worth it. That evening, Sarah met Richard at a cafe near her office. I'll do it, she said, without preamble. Richard nodded, unsurprised. Friday night. This contains everything you need to know. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. Memorize the contents, then destroy them. Friday arrived with unseasonal rain, sheets of water pounding Chicago's streets. Sarah drove her used Honda Civic toward the coordinates she'd memorized, wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. The private airfield was little more than a strip of asphalt with a small hangar, located in farm country an hour outside the city. No security gate, no personnel visible, just as Richard had described. Sarah parked behind the hangar and waited, heart hammering. At exactly 10:30 p.m., headlights appeared on the access road. A small private plane taxied down the runway minutes later. Two men emerged from the plane, carrying several large duffel bags. They loaded them into her car without a word, then returned to the aircraft, which promptly departed. Hands shaking, Sarah unzipped one bag, finding neatly packaged boxes with pharmaceutical labeling in a language she didn't recognize. This was really happening. The drive to Gary took just under an hour. The warehouse was in an industrial area, abandoned buildings looming like ghosts in the rain. Sarah pulled up to the delivery bay as instructed. 3 men waited inside. They unloaded the bags efficiently, then one handed her a heavy envelope. Mr. Bennett says thank you. Just like that, it was over. Sarah drove back to Chicago in a daze, the envelope on the passenger seat seeming to pulse with its own energy. In her apartment, with shaking hands, she counted the money. $100,000 in neat stacks of $100 bills, more cash than she'd ever seen in her life. She hid the money in her closet and tried to sleep, but her mind raced with plans, with relief, with nagging doubt. The next morning, Sarah checked her phone to find a text from an unknown number. Excellent work. Another opportunity next month. Double the payment. Her stomach lurched. She hadn't considered that Richard might expect this to be an ongoing arrangement. She turned on her laptop, intending to check flights to Indiana. Her parents needed to know help was coming, but a news headline caught her eye. FDA warns of deadly counterfeit cancer medications circulating in Midwest. With growing horror, Sarah read the article. Fake versions of several cancer drugs had caused at least 3 deaths in Illinois and Indiana. Patients had suffered severe reactions to unknown ingredients. The medications looked identical to legitimate drugs, but contained none of the active ingredients. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through photos of the counterfeit packaging. They looked exactly like what she'd transported the night before. Her phone rang. Richard. "Good morning, Sarah. Feeling richer today?" "The medications," she blurted. "They're counterfeit, aren't they?" A pause. "Does it matter? You've been paid." "People are dying, Richard. Cancer patients who think they're getting treatment, that's the beauty of it," he interrupted. "By the time they realize the drugs aren't working, the cancer has progressed. No one suspects the medication. They blame the disease." Sarah felt physically ill. "I can't be part of this." Richard's voice hardened. "You already are. Your fingerprints are on the packages. Your car was captured on traffic cameras. You deposited cash that can be traced to known pharmaceutical counterfeiters." "I haven't deposited anything," she whispered. "No. Check your bank account." With trembling fingers, Sarah logged into her account. There it was, a deposit of $25,000 made that morning. "That's just a taste," Richard continued. "The rest will follow in smaller amounts, perfectly structured to avoid suspicion, unless, of course, I need to make a call to the FDA about their investigation." The threat hung in the air. She was trapped. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Another pickup next month, larger shipment, and perhaps some inside information on your company's pharmaceutical clients, nothing too demanding." After he hung up, Sarah sat motionless, the magnitude of her mistake crushing her. She had become a smuggler of fake cancer drugs, medications that were killing desperate patients like her father might soon be. For hours, she cycled through scenarios, run with the money, confess to the authorities, beg Richard for mercy. Each option seemed worse than the last. That evening, she drove to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The oncology floor was quiet, visitors having left for the night. Sarah had researched the doctor's name from the news article, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had first identified the counterfeit medications. She found Dr. Rodriguez reviewing charts at the nurse's station. "I need to speak with you," Sarah said quietly, "about the counterfeit medications." The doctor looked up sharply. "Are you a patient? Have you been exposed?" "No." Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm the person who transported them into Chicago." 30 minutes later, Sarah sat in a hospital conference room with Dr. Rodriguez and 2 FDA investigators, telling them everything. Richard, the pickup, the warehouse, the threats. She handed over the envelope of cash, still untouched, except for what Richard had already deposited in her account. "This is a major break in our investigation," one agent said. "But you understand you're admitting to serious crimes." Sarah nodded, numb. "I know, but I can't let people die because of my mistake." "Why come forward?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "You could have just disappeared." Sarah thought of her father, how vulnerable he would be once his insurance expired, how easily he could have been one of the victims. "Because some things matter more than money," she said simply. "Some mistakes you can't live with." The next weeks were a blur, working with authorities to build a case against Richard and his network, navigating the legal consequences of her own actions. The prosecutor agreed to recommend leniency in exchange for her cooperation, but Sarah still faced potential jail time, certainly the end of her career. Her parents were devastated, but stood by her. "You made a terrible mistake," her father said, "but you're trying to make it right. That's what matters." 6 months later, Sarah sat in a courtroom as Richard Bennett and his associates, were sentenced for fraud, smuggling, and reckless endangerment resulting in death. Her own legal fate remained uncertain, but watching Richard in handcuffs, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Outside the courthouse, Dr. Rodriguez approached her. 3 cancer patients came forward after seeing your story on the news, the doctor said. They had purchased those counterfeit medications through online pharmacies. You saved their lives by speaking up when you did. Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. I don't know what will happen with your case, Dr. Rodriguez continued, but the hospital's patient advocacy program has an opening. When this is all over, if you're interested, we could use someone who understands how desperation can lead good people to make terrible decisions. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Her American dream had turned into a nightmare, but perhaps there was still a path forward, not to wealth or easy solutions, but to something more valuable: redemption. That evening, Sarah sat with her parents at their kitchen table, the house still theirs, thanks to a community fundraiser organized by her father's former co-workers. The mortgage wasn't paid off, her student loan still loomed, but they were together facing their challenges honestly. I was so focused on money being the only solution, Sarah said, that I couldn't see any other way. Her father squeezed her hand. Money problems can be solved many ways, Pumpkin, but once you lose yourself, who you really are, that's much harder to fix. As they shared a simple meal, Sarah realized that the true American dream wasn't about escape from financial struggle through any means necessary. It was about maintaining your integrity even when the system seemed rigged against you. It was about finding community when you needed it most. And sometimes, it was about the courage to start over. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification for more stories like this, and give this video a thumbs up. Click on this next interesting story.